decided to fight back against the Nazis. This went on for a number of weeks. During this time, the Nazis began to liquidate, which means to empty, the ghetto and send the Jews to various concentration camps. My grandmother and her family were sent by cattle cars filled with more than 100 people to Majdanek concentration camp. When they arrived, her family was immediately separated. Her father and her brother were sent to one line, and my grandmother remembers begging her mother to leave her little sister and stay with her. You see, young children and their mothers were sent directly to the gas chamber. My grandmother's little sister was immediately sent to the gas chamber, and she was only 5 years old. That day was also the last day she saw her father and brother. My grandmother and her mother remained together in Majdanek for 3 months. In July of 1943, they were sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau. She was 16 years old at the time. When they arrived, my grandmother describes chaos. Germans were shouting, ripping babies from their mother's arms. Dogs were barking, and everyone was put into lines for selection. This was the moment where each person was sent to the left or to the right. You were selected to die immediately, or you were selected to die later. There was no intention of anyone living. My grandmother and her mother's turn to face the Germans arrived. The German asked my grandmother, sister or mother? Meaning, is this your sister or your mother? My grandmother, who was 16 at the time, knew that mothers and daughters would be sent to the gas chamber. So my grandmother answered, sister. And they were both sent into another line to be tattooed. Going forward, their tattoo was their identification. Your name no longer existed. They were forced to undress. They had their heads shaved and pushed into the showers, after which they received their prisoner uniform. Prisoners for the crime of being Jewish. My grandmother's number is 49560. Although it's faded, it is still visible on her arm today. During her 2 years in Auschwitz, my grandmother worked in an ammunition factory, and her mother survived together until October of 1944, when, during one of the very last selections in Auschwitz, Dr. Mengele, he was known as the Doctor of Death, chose her mother. My grandmother, watching her mother being taken away, ran up to Dr. Mengele and demanded to go with her mother. Dr. Mengele pushed my grandmother away and he said in German, "We don't want you." That was the last time she saw her mother. Her mother was sent to the infamous Block 25, the death block. On January 18th, 1945, my grandmother, along with thousands of starving Jews, were sent on a death march, forced to walk in the freezing snow with barely any food, under the threat of death at every moment. 3 weeks later, they arrived in another camp called Ravensbrück. She was there until May 1945, where she was liberated by the Russians. My grandmother went back to Poland to search for any family members, and she found one cousin. They were the only survivors of a very large family. Her parents, siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all murdered. My grandmother was all alone. After the war, she lived in Germany in a displaced persons camp, a DP camp as it's called, where she met her husband and got married. They immigrated to Canada with my mother in September of 1951. Despite their trauma of the Holocaust, my grandmother and my grandfather, who is also a Holocaust survivor, went forward with hope and love and built a beautiful family in Canada. My grandmother is 93 years old today and has 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 11 and a half great-grandchildren. My grandmother is a Holocaust survivor, but she is more than a survivor. She's a hero. Thank you so much.
So everyone take a minute, because obviously there's a little bit of tears, and I want to, I have a special gift for you guys. I do. Ready, everybody? Can everyone see?
Jill, can I just say something? Can I say?
You can in 1 second. Yeah, hold on. You can say anything you want,
Yeah.
obviously. Hold on. Okay. Go ahead.
Before you show that, friends, I want to share with you that I spoke to my grandmother. She knows that I was doing this. And she said to me, she wished it could be her that speaks to you, but her memory is not what it used to be. So it was very important that she say something to you. There you go.
And I want to show you guys, like, not that this is the thing, you can see right here on her arm. You guys see where I'm pointing? That's her faded number. Do you see? I've met Jody's grandmother.
I am Genia Choleva. I am a Holocaust survivor. I would like to thank you for listening to my story.
Could you, I mean, seriously? I think we should watch it one more time. Oh, I watched it 50.
I am Genia Choleva. I am a Holocaust survivor. I would like to thank you for listening to my story.
Okay. So, Jode, I've known you for 30 years, and I've known bits and pieces of your grandmother's story, but I didn't know all of it because I don't know if we've ever sat down and had this conversation. All of our friends sitting here on the Zoom, Alana, Leora, Shelly, I think we've known bits and pieces, but I don't know if we knew the whole thing, right? Right, girls? Like I just don't. Rosie, her mother, I can't even imagine how this is. And even for my own parents that are on this Zoom too, to know generationally how this has impacted. And I personally, I want to thank my own family for always instilling in us the need to remember and the need to learn from the past and to take pride in who we are. You guys, for homework, had a series of 5 questions that you had for Jody. And then over the weekend, Jody and I met and we sort of compiled the questions. So what I'm going to do is I am going to ask Jody a couple of the questions. They were so similar. It was interesting. Almost everybody had the same questions, which was so interesting to see. Jody and I were like, oh, again, and so we compiled, I think there's 8 questions that we have that I'm going to ask Jody to answer. Okay. And then from there, we can open it up a little bit. And then, yeah. Okay, so Jody, ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, and remember, my girls at home, keep your cameras on. Thank you. Okay, how do you feel about hearing your grandmother's story? Did it hurt you, and was it shocking?
Okay, so first of all, Jill, I just want to say to all of your students, as Jill mentioned, we went through all your questions and I want to thank you. They were sensitive and I wish I had time to answer each one. I'm hoping today is not the end of your questions, but the beginning of more questions. And I'm happy anytime you can reach out to me. I would love to connect with you and answer any questions that you had. Okay, so I want to say that at the outset. We only have time for a few of them, but thank you for your thoughtfulness and your questions and your curiosity to learn. And I'm just so grateful. So the first question about how did I feel hearing my grandmother's story? Did it hurt me? Was it shocking? So I wasn't shocked because I knew about the Holocaust, but I didn't know the exact details of what happened to my grandmother and her family. Now, the details of her experience did hurt me because it's one thing to know about something in the abstract, and it's another thing to hear about what happened to someone you love so much. And to know what she has gone through in her life, what her eyes have seen, no person should ever have to go through something like that.
Okay. Almost everyone asked this question. So you mentioned the death block, but I think my students want to know a little bit more what that is. So over and over we had, what is the death block? And then there was a picture of you in your article with the Israeli flag on, standing in the death block. So they were definitely intrigued by that. So could you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. So as many of you know, 2 years ago, I went to Poland and Israel. And one of our last stops was in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And we went on the tour and we saw everything. But as everyone was leaving, I wanted to see, I had heard that my great grandmother was in this death block. I wanted to see it for myself, and I wanted to obviously go there. So I veered off from the group and I took some time to walk around to look and see what it was. So what was it? So the prisoners in Auschwitz, they lived in these blocks, or you'll often hear them called barracks. They were very large buildings, and each one had a number, and every person who was living in Auschwitz, they lived in a particular barrack. So you could be block 30, block 20, and then there was block 25. Block 25 was called the death barrack because female prisoners who were chosen by the Nazis for any reason at all. So every morning there was a selection. As I mentioned, it didn't just happen when you arrived, but it was every single morning. So the Nazis were looking for anyone who was sick, who had a blemish. It didn't matter. There was no rhyme or reason why they chose you. But if they selected you, they sent you to block 25 and you were kept there until you were sent to the gas chamber. So it wasn't somewhere that you lived. It was like a death row. And my grandmother told me that she knows that her mother was sent to this block.
Okay. I don't know if but did your grandmother say, of all the moments, what was the most like poignant one for her? What was the hardest moment for her?
So when I saw this question, I was trying to think, what does my grandmother speak about most often? And I mentioned them both to you. So these are moments that she brings up still today, and she has nightmares about it. And it's the 2 times arriving at the different concentration camps. First in Majdanek, when she had to make the choice and beg her mother to stay with her and to leave her little sister. That moment is forever with her. And secondly, she always repeats, Mengele took away my mother. So at that moment, having survived for 2 years together, that moment when she ran up to Mengele, yeah, that's it.
Okay, this was another one, a question that was asked of. Did she see with her own eyes adults and children being killed?
Friends, it's a resounding yes. My grandmother saw this everywhere, every day, all the time. With her own eyes, she saw many people, including children, being thrown into the fire alive. Yes.
Okay, this is a big question. And Jody and I talked about it Sunday while I was sitting at the dance studio. We talked about this. And did she stop believing in God? Which is a really big question.
It's true. It's a very common question. Everybody asks this question. And after seeing what my grandmother saw, she didn't really question God. She questioned people, because it was people who carried out the Holocaust.
Okay. How did it feel for you to be standing in a concentration camp?
So this was one of the most powerful experiences of my entire life. And I had mixed emotions. On the one hand, I was so disturbed by everything that I saw. We walked into a number of gas chambers, and there was fingernail scratches on all the walls, and they were stained blue. The walls were stained blue because of the gas that they used. And I saw the ovens, which were the crematoriums. So I was very disturbed at seeing also how massive the camps were. And I thought to myself, I'm looking at industrialized murder. But I also felt so thankful that my grandmother survived, because 90% of the Jews in Poland didn't. 90%.
Okay. Okay, so Jode, how does your grandmother's story impact you today? Now, I could answer this one for you, but I think it's important that you say it. How does this impact you today?
How does this impact me today? There's so many things I could say. And then Jill, we have one more question about.
Oh, what is
what
the
did I
one
learn?
thing you learned when you went to the concentration camp? Sorry, what is the one thing you learned when you went to the concentration camp?
We'll do that first. Okay. So what did I learn? Again, this was very difficult for me to pinpoint. There's so many lessons, but one in particular was that going there, I learned what hate looks like up close and personal. I hope you know what I mean. And I was thinking to myself as I looked around, if this is what evil can do, imagine what we can do with kindness and with love. That's what I learned by going to the camps.
And so, how does your grandmother's story impact you today?
So, as the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, my life is deeply impacted. The Nazis wanted to destroy the Jewish people. They tried very hard, and they almost succeeded. I stand very tall and proud as a Jewish woman, and I'm so inspired to be part of a people that went forward after that, went forward in their life with love, not with hate, with hope and not despair, and who continue to be a better world. I am so inspired by my grandmother's story, and this gives me so much motivation to build a world of love in my life and in the people who are in my life.
And then, what is one lesson to take away from the Holocaust?
So I think it goes back to the other question about what did I learn? That we all have the responsibility to choose to look at another person who is different than us with judgment, with hate, or we can choose to respect other people who live and practice and believe things that are different than us with respect. And for me, that's the biggest lesson to go forward. We're in a world where differences are not understood and are not respected and tolerated. And I want to build a world of tolerance and acceptance of others. And that's the only way I believe that we're going to bring people together. That's
So it's interesting because, and now I'm going to put some of my own students on the spot, but that really is the theme of our course. And I want to explain to everybody on the Zoom, you know, how we came about to Reading Night and where it fits into, I can't see, our curriculum. Okay, so that it makes sense. So we began the year reading The Hate You Give. And for those people that haven't read The Hate You Give, it is a contemporary piece that deals specifically with the mistreatment of African Americans, and not just the mistreatment, but it is so fitting for our current climate because it's literally about a young man who is wrongfully murdered for reaching for a brush in his car, and what comes from that and the ramifications of this police officer killing a 17-year-old innocent Black boy. From there, we read The House on Mango Street, which is a window into the Latino American culture, where it does focus on stereotypes and how other people view the Latino American culture, where they almost live in this ghetto-like fictitious street called Mango Street, and how other people view them, which then in turn impacts how they view themselves. And then from there, we segued to Night, where hence why we're all here today, where we're studying the Holocaust and the way in which the Jewish people were treated during World War II, and how the similar idea of hate impacts. So for my own students, does anyone want to just sort of touch base with Jody and everybody on how Night and how the other pieces and anything that Jody said that is really sort of bringing this all together and what you're learning from it? So if in class, you can raise your hand, and at home, you can raise your little blue hand. Okay, Audrey, sweetie, go ahead.
Okay, well, first I wanted to say, like, thank you for speaking. I personally, I liked it a lot. And the one thing is like, while reading Night, it's extremely disturbing of some of like the graphics and like how it's described. And obviously, like the Holocaust for me, like it's totally unimaginable and terrifying. Just, but like, as some of our classmates like kind of like agreed that like while reading the article about your grandmother and then like listening to her, it felt much more emotional than reading the book, for the main reason that like it feels more real because we're looking at an actual person more than hearing about like a character, more like into a book. And I just thought that was important to say because it's like like not only you, but like the book has also like really changed my perspective on like really how bad the Holocaust was.
So Audrey, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I've read and that I understand is that when you're speaking about the Holocaust, this number always comes up, 6 million. Right? I don't know I don't remember. I've read the book Night. I don't remember if they speak about the number of Jewish people who were murdered is 6 million, including 1.5 million children. It's very difficult to connect to the number 6 million. How do you understand a number like that? And I believe, and which is what you're saying, is reading someone's testimony, one person's testimony. That's why the Diary of Anne Frank and this book Night, and hearing from survivors themselves is so impactful, because you can't necessarily connect to 6 million, but to Genia Choleva, to Elie Wiesel, to Anne Frank, you can connect to one person's story, one person's life. And so that's why it's very important to hear survivor testimonies. And, you know, my grandmother's 93. There are not a lot of survivors still alive today. And so it's incumbent on the generations, on their children and grandchildren, to continue to pass on these stories. And those who hear those stories, which is all of you, to remember and to keep it with you. You are a witness now as well, just like me. You've heard it, and we all have that responsibility to hold with us all the things, the information and experiences of our life, and take it forward to make a positive difference in the world. That's up to us. Okay, I'll stop.
Mom and Dad, my own parents, can I put you on the spot for a second? Or are you going to kill me? Because it's
Yes.
Possibly.
Okay, put on your video.
My video.
Yeah, we can't
We're
see you.
stumped. She's a techno dud.
Hang on,
Okay.
let me see if I can. Oh, I've got me. Okay, there you go.
Okay,
Yes.
they're my parents. And a couple years ago, my parents went to Poland as well. And I wanted to actually, I know how my mother felt about it because she, but I know for my parents, there were being in Poland and going to the concentration camps was absolutely life-changing for them. And they went, you know, later on in their lives. So what I wanted to ask you guys is, I mean, Dad, you mentioned the most horrific image for you, and I want to know if you would share what it was for you that really got you.
Okay, when you go into Auschwitz, there are rooms like in a museum. One of the rooms is filled with human hair, even in braids that they cut off. Another room is filled, and I mean filled to the brim, with eyeglasses. Another room is filled with suitcases. Another room is filled with shoes. But what got to me was the room filled with children's toys, dolls that these kids brought to Auschwitz not knowing. And the Nazis took them and then killed the children. And the room full of toys got to me.
And what about you, Mom?
I guess it was life-changing for me to go to Auschwitz and Birkenau. And we'd also, on another trip recently, saw another concentration camp, much smaller, at the border of Germany and Poland. I think the life-changing aspect of it is I delved into Holocaust information. I read many books, and I can challenge your students and you, and maybe Jody, if she hasn't read it, to read a book called Mischling, Michling. That book has always stuck in my brain because it's an account of Mengele and what an animal he really was. It was what he did to twins, and that book has stuck in me. But it also brought to me the trips and seeing the concentration camp, how important being Jewish is, and how much I identify as a Jew, and how proud I am that I'm still here. And my ancestors, some of them were survivors. Both of my parents were born in Toronto, and my grandparents survived and lived in Toronto. So that was a good thing. And so many didn't. And Jody, what you did today was wonderful. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I do want to add something. It's very important to me to say to all of you, and I'm going to jump off Paula's point, that right before I left Birkenau, and we were about to go to Israel, and I was standing on the train tracks. There's train tracks that lead into Birkenau. And I remember deliberately standing there and looking back what was behind me, and there was the barracks and the crematoriums. And I remember thinking to myself, Look at what they did to us. Look at what they did to the Jewish people. And look at how we responded. One of the things that I'm passionate about sharing, I share it all the time, is this idea that we can't control what happens to us. The only thing that we can control is how we respond to what happened to us. And so how did the Jewish people respond to this? In the same way that my grandparents went forward with love and hope and built new lives and were resilient, this is the most inspiring thing to me, that despite what was done to the Jewish people, that we carried on and are resilient in the face of what happened to us. And so, as I mentioned, and Paula mentioned as well, this is a sense of pride for me, and a very important message that I wanted to share with all of you.
So we only have 3 minutes. I wish we could sit here and talk forever, but Kennedy, sweetie, could you please, Kennedy? Here, I can unmute you.
Okay, sorry. On behalf of Mrs. Harrell's English class, we would like to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak on a very hard topic with us. We loved hearing all your powerful stories, and for that we were so thankful.
We seriously, this was unbelievable. And Jody, you blow me away. I'm glad you're my friend. Now I'm crying. Does anyone else want to say anything before we end? Anyone in the room? Anyone?
Any questions? And I definitely, I want to invite anyone, please connect with me. You can get my information from Jill.
I know where to
have
find her.
any further conversations and questions, please. This would be my greatest pleasure.
To the Toronto girls. Oh, Dr. Krieger.
Yes. I would like to thank, I can't even talk, Jody. And I'm sorry, Jillian. And I just am so grateful on behalf of the students that they could hear this story. Thank your grandmother for me, Jody. Thank your grandmother. It was so delightful to meet her and your parents. We welcome you, Mercy. Please visit us sometime if you can. You're part of the Mercy family now, and we're so grateful.
Yeah, maybe when we can cross the border, you can bring my parents with you. Anyone else want to say anything? Our Toronto girls, we've been friends for our whole lives. Alana, Jody, and Leora, and Shelly. Anyone want to say anything?
Thanks for including us. You know, Jode, we've been friends for a very long time. My grandparents also, my grandfather's 97, my grandmother's 90. They escaped the Holocaust, but their families did not. A lot of their family did not. And I really appreciate hearing your story. I didn't know all of it, and I'm glad I was a part of this today. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Jode. Thanks, everyone.
We love you. Hey, girls, you don't have any homework other than to think to come to class. So you have no homework. What am I supposed to say? Go read? Just think. Okay, girls. Thank you, everybody. Bye, Jody. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you,
wait,
everyone.
Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad. Oh, my principal wants to meet you.
Hi.
Oh, Jody, if I could just say thank you so much for sharing your story. And I can't imagine just the pain and hurt you have, as well as the sense of pride. I think it's just so impactful that you can help us all understand how that generational, we can still feel your emotion, your hurt, your impact for your entire family. And just thank you for your vulnerability and strength and courage. And just give your grandma and your mom hugs for us as well. And Mr. and Mrs.
Friedman.
Friedman, we love your daughter. She's amazing. Thank you for sharing her with us. We are blessed.
And thank you for putting up with her.
I understand why. We love her as well. She is an amazing, amazing woman. We're blessed to have her in our Mercy family. So
I'm
yeah,
glad you like her. We like her a lot.
And when the border crossings lifted, we will visit.
Yes, you have to come visit.
I hope so.
We're all coming. We're all coming.
Oh God, Joe, that was unbelievable. Oh my gosh, I think my principal's cleaning my classroom right now. That is like so nice.
Hi, Shelley. Hi, Lee. Hi, Robin.
Hi guys, where's your mom?
And I see Alicia too. Alicia, I see you.
And my Alicia is also an administrator. So Dr. Krieger and Alicia and Mrs. Sattler, they're all my administrators. So that was
Jody, Jode.
Hi, Mom.
Oh, finally, I couldn't see myself on the Zoom frame, but Jode, God bless your heart. I can't even tell you how proud I am of you for carrying this torch on behalf of my mother and the whole family. And Jody, I